once. In addition to the Lolas and the Porsches and the GT class, we also have the GTO class going. And John Burchard, perhaps you could explain that after we take a look at the point standings for GTO. Tico Almeida is the leader with 57 points. His countryman from Cuba, Rene Rodriguez, just 2 points back with 55. Then Don Devendorf from Los Angeles is third with 46. At 45 points, Ernesto Soto and Joe Crevier with 38 points, and Dennis Assi. And now you're looking at one of the great names in auto racing, Danny Angayas. For the last 2 years, he has crashed at Indianapolis, but he is back in action here. He has 3 career GT victories, as you can see from our graphic, and he looks like he is ready.
Danny will be starting at the back of the GT grid because he did not have an opportunity to qualify.
Here's the starting grid. Number 2 on the pole is John Fitzpatrick in the Porsche Turbo. 00 on the outside is Ted Field in that black car, the Chevrolet Lola. Back in the row 2, John Paul Jr., number 18, the Chevrolet Lola. And number 74, Del Russo Taylor in a Buick Chevron. Moving back to row 3, John Paul Sr. in a Porsche Turbo. You see him moving out of the picture, and Bob Aiken in that brand new Porsche Turbo. Row 4, Danny Angayas, we were talking about number 0. David Hobbs has been scratched. We go to row 5, Don Devendorf in a Datsun 280 ZX Turbo. And number 11 is Jerry Thompson in a Chevrolet Camaro. In row 6,
Tico Almeida, the leader in the GTO point standings in a Ford Mustang, and his teammate Rene Rodriguez beside him in the Chevy Corvette. Row 7, Joe Crevier in the BMW M1, Earl Rowe in a Porsche Carrera, number 26. Peter Deuce in row 8, along with Richard Anderson, both in Corvettes. Row 9, George Drolsom in a Porsche 924 Carrera, and Fred Darling in a Chevy Camaro. In row 10, Arthur Hahn and Al DeLeo, both in Corvettes. And the last qualifier, Wayne Darling in a Chevy Camaro.
So there you have the field as they come around now, following the pace car, trying to get into starting position. This is a 1-hour race, 1 hour. And there you see the prize breakdown. Out of the $35,000, $8,500 to the winner, $5,000 to the second place finisher, and $3,000 to the third place finisher. So plenty of bucks going on this one, and lots of speed. These are the big guys.
Quick pace lap.
And we're going to have a start. There's the green flag, and we're racing.
John Fitzpatrick has the lead going into the first turn. Fitzpatrick is the leader, Ted Field behind him, and Johnny Paul is in third place. Fitzpatrick, Field, John Paul Jr., John Paul Sr.
As they come through the Big Bend, going through the S's.
That's Del Russo Taylor.
Danny Angayas making the move, you saw. The black car.
Fitzpatrick, Field, John Paul Jr., John Sr., Del Russo Taylor, Bob Aiken in the red Porsche.
That's Danny Angayas there, moving along.
Fitzpatrick, Ted Field, and John Paul Jr. on the straightaway.
Fitzpatrick, the pole sitter, leader in the first lap. Ted Field hanging right on, and John Paul Jr. is coming right behind him. So 3 of them battling for the lead here in the opening minutes of this 1-hour GT race at Lime Rock, Connecticut. John Paul Jr., who you saw in a crash during qualifying, they got the car repaired, and he is running. Winner of 5 of the last 7 events.
Big gap after the first 3 cars. John Fitzpatrick won the most recent race in this series, and he's in the lead once again. Fire shooting out when he shifts down. That's the turbo that does that. There's nothing wrong with the car.
Ted Field right behind him in the black car 00. And we've got somebody, slow car there in the back stretch, pulling off to the side. Fitzpatrick is really rolling. Notice that John Paul Jr. also staying right with them. These three, 1, 2, and 3 in the race.
John Paul Jr. has won 5 out of the last 7 GT races. Look for him to be very aggressive.
They're just about equally spaced as they went by the start-finish line and going down into turn 1, the Big Bend, they call it here at Lime Rock. As we mentioned in our opening remarks, we had some rain here earlier in the day, earlier in the week as well, but the racetrack has dried out, so they're on their racing tires. No rain tires here in this race.
Fitzpatrick, Ted Field, John Paul Jr.
We put the clock on him now. There goes the leader bias. Passing, lapping slower cars. Boy, it didn't take many laps before he already is lapping some of the slower cars in the field.
These top
Fitzpatrick really moving as he comes into more traffic now.
These top drivers are really quick. Whoop, there's a spin.
Oh,
John Paul Jr.
John Paul Jr. spun out, but I think he's got it under control and he's got it back in the race. Well,
he's got enough of a gap so he didn't lose position.
A little bobble there, so that will get his attention.
These are lapped cars here.
Number 21, Drew Carrier, just went by. And let's take another look.
Into the left-hander. He was already off before he got to it. Zips around backward, locks the brake so he doesn't go off into the mud. Shifts into low, and off he goes. John Fitzpatrick.
Back to the live action now. We see John Fitzpatrick, the leader in car number 2. The pole sitter in his Porsche Turbo. Picking his way through slower traffic, lapping cars. Inside of 5 or 6 laps, he has picked up a whole bunch of cars he's lapped.
Fitzpatrick puts a lap on Tico Almeida. Ted Field has dropped back a little bit from Fitzpatrick.
John Burchard, I think you were absolutely right when you said forget the Porsches, because John Fitzpatrick is making them remember them, and that's exactly what he's doing here today.
Looks to be running great at this point.
Of course, these are the hybrids, and they can be so temperamental.
These cars, these Porsche cars can cost over $200,000. Temperamental is hardly the word for it. These things are extremely sophisticated racing machines.
Well, earlier, Mike Brockman talked to John Fitzpatrick, so let's join that interview now.
John, you finished third at Laguna Seca. You laid off at Charlotte. You came back to win it at Mid-Ohio. What do we have in store for this weekend?
Well, I think the rest from Charlotte did us good, because it gave us a chance to do some modifications on the car that were needed. And we came back to Mid-Ohio and the car ran beautifully and we won there. And we've been practicing here all week and the car's going incredibly well. And I'll be disappointed not to be on the front row, and I'm really looking for the pole.
John, if you qualify in the West.
All right, back to the action. And there's John Fitzpatrick on the racetrack. And that car is going incredibly well, as he described it. Right now, John's got the watch on him, and so we'll get an unofficial time of how fast he's going, but he is moving around this 1.53-mile circuit.
He is not currently being challenged. Ted Field has dropped back some. But these cars go so fast that a challenge can develop very quickly if he makes a bobble.
mechanical pass. Textbook.
And the Camaro driver moved over nicely for him, too.
All right, here he comes down by the start-finish line. John didn't get his watch. All right, we'll get him next time.
I got too interested in watching the car and not interested enough in watching my watch.
Trying to get by the little Porsche, he does. Remember, we have two races here. We have the GT and the GTO class. They're running together. So far, we've been concentrating on John Fitzpatrick and the GT.
Fitzpatrick's got several cars in front of him.
Coming down the hill, turning toward the main straight.
Pulling out to pass. He's put a lap on Bob Aiken's Porsche already.
While we have a second, we might just talk about Bob Aiken's Porsche.
This is a brand new machine, just built. This is its first race. It was purpose built for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. This car was built in a shop run by Chuck Gay in Atlanta, Georgia. Gay is known for building stock cars primarily, but he put this car together, very exotic, quite a development beyond the current Kramer Porsche, and the thing is about 3 inches lower than the usual K3 Kramer. That's going to be so low it's decapitating earthworms.
That's the red Porsche that you see passing by right now.
Bob Aiken. John Fitzpatrick just turned a lap of 51 seconds and change. That should get us to about 106 miles an hour, 106, 107 miles an hour. So that's motoring pretty smartly.
Right. Right now you're looking at Ted Field in the black car 00. He is in second place in the GT race.
Right behind Rene Rodriguez's Corvette. Whoop.
Now Rene Rodriguez is running in the GTO race. As we have mentioned, this is a race within a race. The GT cars and the GTO cars. The GTO cars not quite as quick.
That's right. Not so exotic, not so expensive.
There's your leader, John Fitzpatrick, and that's what he has done this year in GT racing. Boy, I mean, from going from 65th and 61st place to 5th, then a 34th at Riverside, then 3rd at Laguna Seca, and 1st at Mid-Ohio. So he has got things sorted out.
Been showing some progress in the last couple of races, no question about it. He's the 1980 Series champion.
That's Earl Rowe, who's off on the side in the little Porsche Carrera. I don't think he's asking directions, is he?
I was going to say, is this the way to San Jose?
I think he's asking for instructions what they want him to do with the car.
I think so. There's the leader going down onto the straightaway off the hill. John Fitzpatrick putting a lap on a slower car.
Richard Anderson just came into the pits. He's running in the GTO series. As we focus our cameras on Fitzpatrick.
Snuggling right up behind Joe Crevier in the BMW. And he gets
Another
fired.
spectacular pass.
Yes.
Boy, he has really got the horsepower. When he puts his foot in it, it really moves out.
Those twin turbos, when you kick that in, it can develop in excess of 700 horsepower.
So there you see the leaderboard with John Fitzpatrick, number 2, Penfield 00 is in second place, and then John Paul Jr. and John Paul Sr. running 3rd and 4th. And you see the clock running, 47 minutes and 56 seconds left to go in the race. This is a 1-hour race for these GT cars, as well as the GTO cars. And we'll be back with more of the action after we pause for this message. John Burchard Mike Brockman and yours truly, Gil Stratton, back here at Lime Rock. We're watching GT racing at its best, and we've got another car.
That car is Bob Aiken's Porsche.
Uh-oh.
The car we were just... That's the Red Lobster Porsche number 5. The one that we just said was built down in Atlanta. Currently sitting in the boonies.
Well, they wanted to come out here to Lime Rock to try to sort it out, so...
Bob's climbing out.
And in the pits right now is car number 22.
Is that Wayne Baker's Porsche? Yes. That's Wayne Baker's Porsche. 914. And there's your leader, John Fitzpatrick.
The leader.
Moving on down to turn 1. Tongues of flame coming out the exhaust when the turbos produce that. Actually, it's unburned gasoline. Fitzpatrick moves up on Don Devendorf and goes by him. Devendorf is one of the GTO class at the Datsun ZX Turbo.
Of course, there is a long way to go in this race, but that car seems to be handling so beautifully right now and running so well. You don't want to jinx them, though.
No, don't don't say anything.
John Paul also having no problem getting through traffic.
John Fitzpatrick is a Britisher, and he now lives out in California. Has made his base there in California for several years now.
Got that Corvette ahead. Now you're looking at John Paul Jr. He's currently in 3rd place. Car just leaving your screen on the right side. That's Ted Field. He's 2nd. You see what John Paul Jr. has done. Incredible record in this series.
He is considered one of the hottest young drivers in America. As we said before, he's won 5 out of the last 7 of these races. He is considered very quick. If he has any negative quality about it, is that he tends to be sort of impetuous. He tends not to want to wait to hang back. And sometimes he has spun out of races because he's tried to pass in places where it was inadvisable. At the moment, though, he seems to choose to hang on to Ted Field's tail and look for a good place to pass.
Johnny just got through that turn where he spun earlier in this race. Came out of it in good shape. And boy, he has made up some ground on Ted Field. Right on his tailpipe.
There's a rumor going around that John Paul Jr. may get a NASCAR Grand National ride before this season is over, in addition to this current ride in the JLP Racing Lola.
Get by Field, but Field, look at this battle.
Here we go.
2nd place.
No,
Barely come down the main straight.
He's going to tuck in behind him.
Ted Field seemed to have just a little more horsepower down that stretch. Boy, what a race this is for 2nd place. Ted Field in the black car, John Paul Jr. in the white car. There they are. And that's the difference between 2nd and 3rd place here at Lime Rock.
Putting a lap on Don Devendorf. I think Paul is getting ready to set him up for a pass. I wouldn't be surprised if he gives it a try on the straightaway. Field's got too much horsepower for him.
John Paul Jr. appears to be a little quicker through the turns. Ted Field a little quicker down the main straights. Perhaps John Paul Jr. now sitting back, waiting for a spot.
Field has been driving in this series for several years. When he started out, he was not considered very highly. But he's developed year after year to a point where he is now obviously a very competitive racing driver, and he really doesn't have to take a back seat to anybody.
Now they've got a couple of slower cars in front of them that they're going to have to get by.
This may be a key here. Yeah,
look at John Paul.
I think Paul is using the traffic.
And John Paul Jr. got him. He passed him going into the bend.
Nice move on the outside.
John Paul Jr. just doing a great job passing going into the first turn to take over second place behind John Fitzpatrick. So the two Lolas been racing each other while the Porsche Turbo is out there riding along by himself.
I think Fitzpatrick is just as happy that those two guys are racing each other and not him. A couple of Corvettes in the way here. There's John Paul Jr. He's a rangy young man, tall for a racing driver. Most racing drivers tend to be rather short and compact. John Paul Jr. is built more like, I would say, a wide receiver in football. Wide shoulders, narrow waist, and I would say roughly 6'2", maybe somewhere in that height.
He's a real athlete.
Yes, he is.
Now John Paul Jr. beginning to put a little daylight between his Chevrolet Lola and Ted Field's Lola, running in third place. Remember, down the hill they come and heading toward the main straight. One lap ago it was Field who was leading, but now it's John Paul Jr.
It was just 2 years ago that John Paul Jr. won his first GT race, and it was right here at Lime Rock that it happened. Coming up on Joe Crevier's BMW.
Field gets by him nicely as well.
Those are your second and third place cars. The two Lolas. The white one with the red trim, that's John Paul Jr. And the black one is Ted Field.
Now Mike Brockman is standing by down in the pit, so let's get the action. Mike?
It looks like Devendorf spun in front of Aiken going through turn number 1, and Aiken could not avoid him. It's a real shame. This is a brand new car, first time out for it, but they're trying to get the front end back together so they can go out and get some more miles on the car. Back to you, Gil.
All right, well, that's good to see that Bob will get back into the race, get some more miles, as Mike had mentioned.
Aiken told me a couple of days ago that they looked upon this race essentially as a test session. Because of the fact this car had never raced before, they felt that it would be good just to put it on the track and run it to see how it goes. John Paul Jr. setting out in pursuit of John Fitzpatrick.
Clock on John Paul Jr. We'll put a clock on the interval between the two cars.
Okay. That's Ted Field and Double O.
Double O seemed to have a little more flat-out speed, but John Paul Jr., wow, what a job he is doing. In case you joined us late, he spun the car in about the second turn of the race. And had a problem, but he's gotten it all back together again, and now running in second place behind John Fitzpatrick. That was the spot where he spun it. Now you're looking at John Fitzpatrick in car number 2. This is the Porsche Turbo. Boy, it's working wonderfully well. So there you see the standings right now. John Fitzpatrick, the leader, over John Paul Jr., Ted Field, and John Paul Sr. And we'll be back with more of the action from Lime Rock after we pause for this timeout.
A message for you.
Back at Lime Rock, and right now the driver of that beautiful brand new Porsche is standing by in the pits with our Mike Brockman. Mike?
Move that hole.
Bob Aiken, this brand new car, he just had an accident. Can you explain to us what happened out there?
Well, we were going pretty good and running along, I guess, about 5th or 6th. And I was just learning the car, really, because we haven't had much of a chance in the dry, really, to test the car at all. Right. Just 3 or 4 laps. And Don Diefendorf's Datsun just spun right in front of me, and it was either hit him or go off. So I went off, and just the dirt tore up the nose.
So you didn't hit another car?
I got out of the car, and I tore this off and put it in the cockpit and got the thing loose and drove it back, which is sort of what you do in endurance racing, because you figure if you can get it back to pitch, you can always fix it.
Did you have any structural damage?
No, just fiberglass, and it's just too bad we can't go on. We don't have a spare nose yet.
It won't bother your Le Mans plans?
Oh, not a bit, no.
Okay, Bob. Good luck at Le Mans.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and thank you for the explanation on Bob Aiken's car. Good that he was not injured. And John Fitzpatrick continues to lead this race with John Paul Jr. running second. There's the leader. Ted Field is third. John Paul Sr. running fourth.
I put a watch on John Paul Jr. on one of his recent laps, and he was running in excess of 109 miles an hour. So we'll see how the leader is doing and see what the kind of comparison we can get. Fitzpatrick going into turn 1.
We have Fitzpatrick on the watch right now. John Paul Jr. in the neighborhood of 109 miles an hour, actually a little better than 109 miles an hour. And he has just made up a lot of ground after that early spin out. There's Fitzpatrick.
He's a very smooth driver.
Absolutely. He's got that groove, and he's just nailed it. Here he comes by the start-finish line.
Well, he's running, by my estimate, in the 108-mile-an-hour speed. So
John Paul Jr. is picking up, well, almost a mile per lap, mile an hour per lap. He's still got a ways to go.
Yes, he does. He's not on his tail by any means. But we have a ways to go in the race.
That's right.
And if he continues at the same pace, he could close up after a short period of time.
This is a 1-hour race. And right now, let's go back to Mike Brockman in the pits.
It's starting to rain down here, and it looks like all the crews are getting ready with their rain tires. We're out right now. We're on Gaius's crew and Ted Field's crew. They've got the tires out. They've got their wrenches ready, so they're just getting ready for the rain. It looks like it may happen. Back to you, Gil.
All right, there you see the tire on the track, or on the pits rather, waiting for the Interscope Racing team. Fitzpatrick, would you estimate that he would have to change rubber?
I really don't think that they're going to break any records as far as pit stops are concerned. This development could throw the whole thing into a cocked hat here, because these crews are not really well schooled in quick tire changes.
And as you can see, the rain is beginning to fall again. So maybe, as Daniel Gaius comes into the pits, maybe they're going to put the rain tires on.
Daniel Gaius is in. They're getting the oil off the windshield, oil and bugs and that kind of thing.
There is no attempt at putting on a new tire.
That's right. His visibility must have been very bad if he's pulling in.
It looks like mostly a cosmetic stop. just cleaning the windshield, and Danny Ongaias back into the race. Danny so far has not been a factor.
That's the companion car to Ted Fields, Lola, both, of course, Interscope racing machines. There's our leader, John Fitzpatrick, down the hill.
Making that sweeping turn before coming into the home stretch. And there you see it. John Fitzpatrick has the lead over John Paul Jr., Ted Field, and John Paul Sr. And we'll be back with more of this GT action after we make this time out. The best young boxers in the business come your way Thursday nights when ESPN presents live top-ranked boxing. James Quick Tillis, Rocky Lockridge, Dwight Braxton, and Frank the Animal Fletcher have cracked the ranks of the top 10 contenders, so you can lay claim to the best combination in boxing by tuning in on Thursday nights to ESPN and Top Rank Boxing. We're at Lime Rock, Connecticut. We're watching the GTs and the GTOs in action, and we have John Fitzpatrick in car number 2, leading John Paul Jr. in car number 18. Ted Field in car 00 is in 3rd place, and John Paul Sr. driving car number 8 is in 4th place. And there's the leader, John Fitzpatrick.
Going through the Big Bend now, exiting into the S's. The only left-hand turn on this course, right there. Fitzpatrick came over to this country after having developed a reputation as an endurance driver in Europe. He's backing off for traffic.
As you can see, Fitzpatrick got through there nicely.
Very smooth driver.
It would appear that he is rather easy on the equipment because he seems to be driving so smoothly.
I think that's the mark of an endurance driver, because in endurance racing, you really have to be careful because you can't just go out and charge for 12 hours or 6 hours or 24 hours. And I think that's a learned response in a driver to sort of baby the equipment to make it finish.
John Burchard did an interview with John Bishop, and I think that you'll find it very interesting. So let's go to John Burchard.
I'm with John Bishop, the president of the International Motorsports Association. John, we're arriving at the halfway point of the season. Could you give us a quick overview on the Camel Series?
This is a continuation of the rivalry started last year between our new prototype cars, like this Chevrolet Lola that's out here, and the traditional Group 5 international cars like the Porsche 935. And it's a very exciting season. Both kinds have won. Our season has expanded also this year into 20 races from 15 last year.
We thank you for the word from the top from John Bishop, the president of IMSA.
He's the man who runs the show at IMSA.
And that's the man that's running this show here today at Lime Rock, John Fitzpatrick, driving his Porsche Turbo. He qualified for the pole, and he took the lead, and he stayed there.
He won the series in 1980 and really dominated the series that year. However, in 1981, he had a great deal of mechanical difficulty. It seemed like almost every race, something major went wrong with his car. And so he sort of slacked off in his strong finishes. This year, he seems to be coming back. We had a graphic on earlier that showed that he's been making progress.
And there's the car in second place, John Paul Jr., car number 18. That Lola is really making some tracks out there. This time he goes by Richard Anderson in the Corvette.
Coming up on Rene Rodriguez in the other Corvette.
The Corvette is no match for the Lola. Oh. went by him like he shifted into overdrive.
Indeed. These big Chevy engines that run these Lolas, the big Chevy engines that power these Lolas, put out a great deal of horsepower in the neighborhood of 550 to 600.
So in first place, you've got John Fitzpatrick, and in second place, you've got John Paul Jr., and there's the man in second place. Fitzpatrick with a comfortable lead now. Third place, the 00 Ted Field.
The two Interscope cars quite close together now. Angaius about to be lapped by his boss.
There's the two Interscope teammates, 0 and 00. That's Ted Field and 00. Danny Angaius right ahead of him in 0.
And Fitzpatrick taking both of them, or about to take both of them.
Ted Field in third place. He is one lap behind Fitzpatrick.
That suggests to me that John Fitzpatrick is out there for some serious motoring.
Ted Field, I think, would like to unlap himself at this point.
Sure would. And in comes Wayne Baker into the pits. Smoke coming out of the back of that Porsche. Going to take off the deck. Smoke continues to come out from under the Porsche.
Turn back to the racing now. There's John Paul Jr. and Fitzpatrick. Now that's John Paul Sr.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Number 8 rather than 18. And Fitzpatrick trying to lap him.
And John Paul Sr., I think, might be trying to hold up Fitzpatrick so his son can catch him.
That would be good strategy for the
It certainly
John
would,
Paul
and it
team.
sure looks like that's what he's doing. He's not making it easy.
But Fitzpatrick got by him, coming down the hill and headed for the main stretch. Here he comes by the start-finish line. So there you see the way they stand right now in this 1-hour feature race, the GTs. John Fitzpatrick, the leader, and we'll be back with more of the action from Lime Rock, Connecticut after we pause for this commercial message. We're back at Lime Rock, and the GT Series, as we've mentioned, the GTO Series is also running in the same race. And number 83, Don Davendorf of Los Angeles, California, and car number 83 is the leader in the GTO class, and there he is.
That's a Datsun ZX Turbo, and Don has built that up in his own shop in California. Don is considered by some people to be almost a reincarnation of Mark Donohue. He's a combination of engineer and driver, and he is very good at both. Now, the GTO Series is made up of cars that are somewhat less exotic, somewhat less expensive than the out-and-out racing cars like the 935, which is coming up right behind Davendorf right now, the leader John Fitzpatrick.
There's the GTO point standing. Tico Almeida with 57 points. Rene Rodriguez, his teammate, with 55 points. And then Davendorf, who is leading this race now for the GTO, is in third place. And with a victory here, he would put 20 points into his account, and he would just be leaping forward.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he could do it, because usually the cars that he builds are very reliable as well as very quick.
I know that he has been described as somewhat of an engineering genius, particularly in the use of lightweight metals and exotic metals.
Yes, and he's also a mean man with a computer. He's the kind of fellow that has the brain that can work on very complex problems and solve them. And that's been his record since he's gotten into racing.
the GTO series, which is going on just race within a race, so to speak. And there's the GT leader, John Fitzpatrick, coming down the start-finish line. And he has a 39-second lead, incredible, over John Paul Jr. So you could understand why John Paul Sr. might have been trying to block him off a little bit. But I mean, he's just running away.
I think he's settled down now to a good, strong pace, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's going a few miles an hour slower than he was earlier in the race.
The only suspense seems to be when he comes up to slower traffic, whether or not he's going to get by successfully.
That's right, because as we mentioned, sometimes the drivers don't always watch their mirrors the way they should. They're concentrating on their own racing. And when a car comes up as quickly as one of these Porsches, particularly one as quick as this particular Porsche, then it sometimes is a surprise to them to find that they've got that car right in their mirrors or up alongside.
John Fitzpatrick, though, a man who would not, and there he is, a good look at him, would just not say yes to the Lolas. They said the Porsches were becoming obsolete, but he is proving otherwise, isn't he?
Absolutely. When the Lolas came in last year, Brian Redmond drove to the GT Championship in a Lola. The car was very successful right out of the box, and some folks thought that the Porsches would be outmoded, but that has not proved to be the case, and Fitzpatrick is living proof of that at the moment.
Mike Brockman is standing down in the pits right now, so let's get a report. Mike, what's going on?
I've got an interesting story that's developing down here. John Fitzpatrick turned the boost way up at the start of the race to get away from the competitors, and we just spoke with his crew chief, and he said that they are very marginal on fuel for finishing this race. They're not really sure if they can finish the race without a pit stop, so keep an eye on that. That's why he's building up that big lead.
That's a very interesting development.
Oh, that's a very, very fine report. Thank you very much.
That would be a heartbreaker if he ran out of gas.
Oh, to run away with a 39-second lead over the second-place car and then run out of gas. Oh, no.
No, he's got to be concerned about that. And he's got to turn down the boost on the turbocharger so that it doesn't use up so much fuel, doesn't develop so much horsepower. And John Paul Jr., if he feels like he's getting that lead whittled down, he'll be sure pressing on to try to catch up with Fitzpatrick.
"15 and a half minutes left in this one-hour race, so they have completed 3/4 of it. And you wonder, has he got 3/4 of a tank of gas and 1/4 left? That is going to be preying on the mind of John Fitzpatrick in the cockpit of that Porsche Turbo, number 2, the leader.
So what do you do in a situation like this? Do you go slow and let John Paul Jr. catch you and conserve your fuel, or do you go fast to stay ahead and use up more fuel? That's got to be one of those.
So John Paul Jr. is still trailing John Fitzpatrick with about 15 minutes left to go in the race. We'll be back to continue this GT race from Lime Rock after we pause for this timeout. Gil Stratton along with John Burchard and Mike Brockman here at Lime Rock, Connecticut, as we're watching John Fitzpatrick in the Porsche Turbo as he leads this GT race, a one-hour race with about 3/4 of it having been run, and he has extended his lead over the second-place car driven by John Paul Jr. to nearly 40 seconds. Ted Field is 00, and his teammate on the Interscope team at 0 is Danny Angayas. Danny Angayas, what a great story he is with the comebacks that he made from that terrible accident a year ago in Indianapolis.
That was a horrendous crash, one that many people were very surprised that he survived. He did survive it, obviously, has come back to race this year, and he is competitive once again, there's no question about that, He's not having a great day at the moment, but I think that's probably more a problem with the car than it is with the driver.
Danny is now running in 5th place, and prior to the race, I had a chance to talk to him and asked how that leg felt, and he just kind of downplays everything. He said, it's coming along fine. It's all right.
He's a very soft-spoken man.
Yes, he is.
A shy man, and he's not the kind of PR person's dream. He's not great at interviews, but that doesn't mean that he is aggressive or unpleasant. He is just shy and quiet.
He does his talking behind the wheel of a race car. And there's his teammate Ted Field in 00.
Twin Lola Chevys from the Interscope stable.
So Danny Angayas, who started back in the 4th row in the starting grid, has worked his way up to 5th place. Fitzpatrick, the leader. John Paul Jr. in 2nd place. Ted Field, 00, is in 3rd place.
Right now he's trailing John Paul Sr. in the JLP Racing Porsche. That's Sr. in the white Porsche right ahead of Lola.
John Paul Sr. has not been a factor in this race as yet.
No, he did, I think, try to do a little team strategy for his son in blocking Fitzpatrick, but that was only a momentary thing.
A bit of gamesmanship.
I think so.
And the Interscope pair running like they're on a track, the two of them. Those two black cars, 00 and 0. Ted Field and Danny Angayas.
One of the people in our crew said that he loved the looks of this car. He said it's really a mean-looking machine. He said it's the kind of car that Darth Vader would drive if Darth Vader was a racing driver.
He may be right. We're keeping our eye on the car of John Fitzpatrick and also his pit. There's Ted Field's results. From a 62nd finish at Daytona to start, he moved ahead to win at Riverside.
That victory at Riverside was an endurance race when he co-drove with Bill Whittington in that race.
Laguna Seca, 4th place finish, then at Charlotte, 21st, and then at Mid-Ohio, back to 3rd. So Ted's had kind of an up and down year.
Yes, he has, but he's a steadily improving driver. Right on the tail of John Paul Sr. Pulling out. Coming up on Jerry Thompson's Camaro.
Remember, the Camaro is not in the same class as the GT cars. It's a GTO car, so that's why they go by them so quickly.
And Thompson's Camaro is not in such great shape as the Lola either.
There's the leader, John Fitzpatrick. And with John Fitzpatrick leading, and we would estimate we have about 10 minutes of racing left in this GT race. John Fitzpatrick is the leader. John Paul Jr. is in 2nd place, followed by Ted Field and John Paul Sr. We'll be back with those final 9.5 minutes of the race after we pause for this timeout. 1.53-mile track nestled in the Berkshire Mountains. And they are just flying here in the GT specialty with John Fitzpatrick in the Porsche Turbo leading car number 2. There he is.
That Porsche Turbo began life in the Kramer shops over in Germany. The Kramer brothers are very famous Porsche builders, and this is one of their products racing here. Very exotic machine.
And he got a little more traffic to go through.
Coming up on the Buick Chevron of Del Russo Taylor. There's JP Jr.
That was Del Russo Taylor he just got by.
That's right.
The Buick Chevron, the blue car.
That turbo goes whistling down the straightaway and heads into the Big Bend.
got some more action down in the pit, so once again, let's rejoin Mike Brockman.
Just had a word with John Paul Jr.'s crew. At this point, they don't think there's any way they can catch Fitzpatrick, but they're going to run as hard as they can to maintain their position just in case Fitzpatrick does have a problem. And at this point, I think they know about Fitzpatrick's fuel problem. So we'll just keep an eye on him. Back to you, Phil.
All right, Mike, it's always amazing to me how all those pits have that espionage system that's going, that grapevine, to find out about the others. Now, how would John Paul Jr.'s pit crew know about John Fitzpatrick's fuel problem?
There's got to be some sort of spy network that's going on down there.
It's incredible.
The grapevine works very quickly in racing.
It does indeed. And there is John Paul Jr. in car number 18.
Getting a shot is that young lady.
That's the same turn he just got through, if you joined us late, that he spun very early in this race, but was able to get the car back on the racetrack and resume, and he's done a good job. Winner of 5 of the last 7 GT events. But it looks like he's going to be chasing Mr. John Fitzpatrick for the 2nd straight race for 1st place.
I think the people in the Paul pit are hoping very fervently that Fitzpatrick's fuel supply is so low that he'll have to turn the boost way down.
Well, one thing he can rest assured in, and that is that they come off that downhill turn, and so he can coast.
That corner can be dangerous. It's sort of deceptive, and if you get off there, you have a grassy area that's a runoff area, and then you have a tire wall to run into, and that's exactly where John Paul Jr.'s Lola wound up during qualifying the other day.
That's right. This record. That is truly an incredible record. John Paul Jr. with first at Daytona, Sebring, Road Atlanta, Laguna Seca, and Charlotte. 5 victories in 7 races. Riverside, the car broke. Mid-Ohio, I understand he had some problems there too with the car.
Usually, though, if the car is running anywhere near decently, he is charging for the lead.
John Paul Sr. is coming into the pits right now. And there's John Paul Jr., father and son, certainly the most successful father and son racing team. And we got a lot of smoke
coming out of the Corvette, which may be dropping some oil right onto the windshield and the tires of John Paul Jr. But Jr. gets by, so it's not an insurmountable problem.
There's John Paul Sr. in his car. They're changing the left rear tire on car number 8, John Paul Sr.
The car is up on the air jacks.
Excuse me, I was just going to say, you can see the spare part in the bottom of the picture of John Paul Jr.'s car. They're identical, except some of the paint is reversed.
Right.
Colors. And there's John Paul Jr. out on the racetrack, going through the bend. So John Fitzpatrick is our leader. John Paul Jr. in 2nd place, Ted Field and Danny Ongaias in 3rd and 4th, respectively. And we'll be back with the finish of this GT race after we pause for this message. Gil Stratton, John Burchard, Mike Brockman back at Live Rock. We have 4 minutes left in this GT race, and John Fitzpatrick. The question now is, has he got enough fuel in that tank to get him all the way through for the last 4 minutes?
In the early portions of the race, Fitzpatrick turned the boost way up, as Mike Brockman said, to get a lead on his pursuers. But when you turn the boost up, of course, the horsepower comes up and the mileage goes down. So the fuel is a question at this point.
Fitzpatrick with almost a full lap lead over John Paul Jr., the 2nd place car.
There's John Paul Jr.
And John Paul Jr. right ahead of him now, so he's trying to lap him.
Very close to putting a lap on him. Has him in sight.
There's the fuel. I don't know if he's going to come in because we only have here. He's coming in. He's coming into the pits. This is the leader. John Fitzpatrick is coming in, and there can't be much more than about 2.5 minutes of this race left. So he comes in. They'll just top it off. John Burchard has got the stopwatch on the pit stop here. That's it, just enough. Try to get him home.
About 5
He saw him
seconds.
slip a little bit on those puddles as he was coming out of the pit. But he's back out on the racetrack, and he's back underway before John Paul Jr. could get to him.
Just about 5 seconds to dump that fuel in.
Well, he had close to a 40-second lead, so he should still be comfortable. Now, that was a major decision right there.
I think the fact that he had such a considerable lead over John Paul Jr. helped to make it easier.
There are 2 minutes left in the race. 2 minutes left in this 1-hour GT race at Lime Rock, Connecticut. And John Fitzpatrick, you just saw it. It couldn't have been more than a couple of quarts of gasoline, it appeared, that they put in there. Maybe with those speed bottles a little more.
They just slopped it in very fast. You don't need to fill her up. It's not a question of filling it up for a long trip.
Fitzpatrick now probably with about 2 or 3 more laps at the very most.
And he can afford to turn up the wick a little bit too now.
So apparently his worries about running out of fuel have vanished with that 5-second pit stop. Great job by his pit crew. We must commend them.
Now, if nothing goes wrong, he can cruise to the finish.
Left to go. 1 minute to go in the race. Jim Sidley, the starter, getting out the checkered flag. 1 minute left. So probably one more lap for John Fitzpatrick. That should about do it. So if Fitzpatrick can keep it together, stay out of people's way.
If he slows down on this lap, he'll be able to get the checkered flag this time around.
And it looks like he is slowing down some, John. It really does.
Yes, he's moving perceptibly slower than he was previously.
Oh, yes, he's perceptibly slower. Jim Sidley has the checkered flag out in his hand. He's looking now, looking for John Fitzpatrick.
Time's running out.
There you see it. 2 seconds.
This will be it.
Fitzpatrick perfectly timed, and here he comes to take the checkered flag. John Fitzpatrick in the Porsche Turbo, and there it is, the checkered flag. The victor is John Fitzpatrick. And what a ride that was.
His crew chief, Tim Schenken, was standing alongside the start-finish line, waving his arms like mad when John crossed the finish line.
So for John Fitzpatrick, that's 2 in a row.
2 in a row indeed. This puts him back on a winning track like he was in 1980.
Certainly going to be a great confidence builder. And here comes the car for second place. This is John Paul.
And he crosses the finish line.
And he got the checkered flag. Looking now for Ted Field. Danny Ongaias.
And there is that beautiful Kramer Porsche 935. On the road to Victory Circle,
where our Mike Brockman will be talking to him, and I'm sure that John will be very, very pleased to talk to anybody who asks.
Transplanted Britisher, now living in California. Had a rough year last year, but this year it's coming together once again.
And here he comes into Victory Circle, pulling into Victory Lane right now. And you can hear the scattering of applause as some of these fans who braved the rains earlier in the week, early this morning as a matter of fact. But they have been treated to a great race here as we see now Field and Ongaias pulling into their pit. But you're looking at the man that won it, John Fitzpatrick. 2 victories in a row.
The winner unbuckling, sliding out. Looks like he's put in some work today.
And the congratulations being handed out. Well deserved.
The winner's cap goes on. And
Ted Field unofficially finishing third in the race.
A shrug there that means, well, what does it mean? I did the best I could, fellas.
All right, now standing by is Mike Brockman to talk to the winner, John Fitzpatrick. Mike?
John, you said you were going to put it on the pole. You did. And you said you're going to win it, and you did. That makes 2 in a row. How's it feel?
Oh, it feels really good, you know, I just can't catch my breath. It's quite hard work around here. But what can I say? The car was great. The guys did a super job, and I kept it on the road, and we won. I mean, it was.
You say it's hard work. You made it look easy.
No, believe me, it's hard work. It's a lot of corners and a lot of slower cars, and it's quite hard work. But when you win, it doesn't seem so bad.
Did you have any problems at all?
No, nothing. I pitted towards the end because the fuel was low. I think I might have made it, but I didn't want to risk it, so I just came in for a couple of gallon, and you know, once I could see John Paul Jr. and had nearly the lap on him, I knew I was okay.
So you just did that for safety's sake once you had a good lead?
Yeah, there was no point in overtaking him. You know, he might not have seen me. You don't know what might happen.
John, it was a great win. Congratulations.
Thank you.
There's Danny Angayas.
Danny's got a smile on his face.
Yes, he does. And he drove a fine race.
It's nice to finish for a change. Danny's had his problems. Nice to finish one.
No, they did a good job. They really.
And so the local radio and television folks interviewing John Fitzpatrick. And there you see the unofficial results. Car number 2, John Fitzpatrick. The winner, John Paul Jr. in car number 18 was second. And Ted Field in 00 was third. And Danny Angayas finished in 4th place. And boy, what a finish that was when you figured that Danny had started back in the 4th row. So he had picked his way and threaded his way through some traffic and did a great job of driving here today.
Porsche, 3 Lolas, which is a little surprising to me. I rather expected, since this track is so short with so many turns, that perhaps the Lolas might have an advantage here.
All right, now let's take a look at the race within a race, the GTO winners. And Mike Brockman is standing by with Dan Devendorf. Go ahead, Mike.
Don, you led it from...
congratulations. Hey, there he is.
Don,
Fancy
you led
meeting
from
you
start
here.
to finish.
You couldn't get out of the way quick enough. Very civil of you.
I was trying.
Frightened you last week.
Made it look easy out there, Don.
Well, actually, we had a little bit of a problem. Early on, Aiken and his new car was holding us up a bit. We finally got around, and just as we came around in turn 3, somebody laid down a big stripe of oil. And we spun. I think he was right behind me, and he spun. And so then we had to play a game of catch up, and we were in the process of closing. Who was leading first at the time? We were about 15 seconds down or so, and he pulled out. But you know, we were able to, after that, maintain a consistent pace. And despite the fact when I was getting back out of there, I ruined our clutch, and the clutch wasn't releasing. And so we were kind of driving without a clutch out there. It was kind of interesting.
Well, you sure made it work for you. Good luck, or congratulations, Don. It was a great race.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Mike, and congratulations to Don Devendorf for the victory in the GTO part. And you see the laps completed, 69, 105.6 miles, the winning margin, 32.8 seconds. That's in the GT series. That was what John Fitzpatrick did here today with his Porsche Turbo at Lime Rock, Connecticut. And there you see the victory stand. John Fitzpatrick, the victory. We'll be back with a final word after we pause for this timeout. Gil Stratton speaking for John Burchard and Mike Brockman back here at Lime Rock, and we now have the official results of today's GT race. Number 2, John Fitzpatrick in the Porsche Turbo was the victor. In second place, number 18, John Paul Jr. in a Lola. And then the Interscope Racing Team finishing 3-4, Ted Field in 00, and Danny Angayas finishing in 4th place. So a good finish for the Interscope team, but a beautiful finish and a great day for John Fitzpatrick. You heard him say when he talked to Mike Brockman earlier that he was a little worried about the fuel. He thought he could have finished, but decided to top it off. He said, we took a couple of gallons. I would be surprised, John Burchard, if he took 2 gallons, maybe 2 quarts.
More like that, yeah, Gil. I think that Fitz has signaled that he is back for sure in the GT series. After a bad year in 1981, now he's put together 2 victories in a row. The Porsche is still alive, obviously, and I'm really glad to see him back because I think it improves the competition.
Well, 2 victories in a row. He is really back for sure. And as you can see, some of the fans here not ready to leave, not ready to leave at all. They have stuck through. We had some rain earlier this week. We had rain early this morning, but they stayed through. They're real racing fans. They enjoyed every moment of it. And even some of the drivers didn't enjoy the way things turned out, but nevertheless, it was a safe and sane day. That's Earl Rowe checking his car out there along the track. And right now, for a final thought, let's go back to the pits or the winner's circle, wherever Mike Brockman is standing by. Mike?
When we talked to Fitzpatrick earlier, he told us the key to his success last week was taking or skipping one race and getting the car really ready. Well, he looks like he did the right thing. He turned the boost up early on in the race. He got a good lead. He had enough of a lead to come in, take 2 gallons of fuel, take a short 8-second pit stop, and go on to win it handily.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And John, do you have one final word you could interject at this point?
Well, I think that with Fitzpatrick making the Porsche go so well that that the folks driving Lolas, that is John Paul Jr., and also the Interscope team of Danny Ongais and Ted Field have got to get their sums together even more than they have in the past, because they have a brand new competitor to run in the front.
All right, we certainly want to thank all the fine folks here at Lime Rock, Jim Haynes and all his staff, and our great crew out here that has been working so diligently in weather that could be described as not the best. You see the tents are up and everybody is just kind of laid back now, and they've enjoyed a great day of racing here, and they saw a fine victory by John Fitzpatrick. So now this is Gil Stratton speaking for John Bouchard and for Mike Brockman, and telling you the final results once again. John Fitzpatrick the victor, John Paul Jr. finishing second, Ted Fields was third, and Danny Ongais was third, or fourth rather. So that's it from Lime Rock, Connecticut. Gil Stratton saying so long, everybody. This has been a Cinevid International presentation, produced in association with the Entertainment Sports